Of course it's gaining credibility because it seems as if the big boys are doing what they should be doing. And if the big boys are doing what they should be doing, it seems to be credible that you should then join the trade. So, as I said, I'm not suggesting for 1 second that you start trading non-farm payrolls, but if you did trade non-farm payrolls, would you have been short at any stage during that trade? Would you have been selling that trade with the value line going up like this? Would you have been trying to sell that based on this morning's classroom? Not a chance. So the only thing you would have been in was a long gold trade or no gold trade. And that's what we've got to try and understand. The only trade we would have been in a long gold trade or no gold trade at all, in which case either you never made any money or you made a fortune. You never lost any money. You never lost any money. And that's the main thing from these types of things. If I said to you, what's the only trade you would have been in bonds? What's the only trade you would have been in bonds? What was the answer? Long, right? If you're going to be buying gold, the answer should probably be the same on bonds. You're probably going to be buying bonds. Why would you be buying bonds when the value is lower? Because the price action value is lower, but obviously the actual trade value is higher. So you might say, well, I don't have if the price had balanced a little bit higher, I'd be quite keen on the long bond trade. Fair enough, absolutely. This is a 15-minute chart, remember. And then you go, wait a second. There's a 15-minute chart. What are you going to show me next? Well, based on a 15-minute chart, did the value actually move higher but prior to that anyway? Yes, it did. Look. Yes, it did. Look, I mean, I can't hide it, guys. So there's the value. There's the transition of value. There's a rejection. The price trades down. That value area kind of stays the same. The price then rejects the low price here. And where does the value build? Pretty much exactly the same, right? So you need to start finding buyers above what price? 188s. So what happens to the bond? Does it find buyers above that price? Yes, it does. It starts to find buyers in here. So what are you going to say? Okay, that makes a bit of sense because the short-term break-evens are starting to turn back up in my favor. I know why this stuck around, because the short-term break-evens were selling against me. Macro-wise was very bullish. So the short-term break-evens were selling against me. No shit, Sherlock, because we'd been buying oil off the bottom edge as part of an inflation hedge. So obviously when that starts to hold in that area, what happens to value? What happens to value before the break? Well, you can see what happens to value. It shifts significantly in line with the overall shape of the markets. The value shifts up. Now, it never really builds up here, does it? It never really builds on a macro chart. That's really the value area. The price then sells off into a bottom edge. Because of that value area shift, you're going to be saying, right, I'm going to be buying into these lower prices. Now, when you buy into a lower price, the price needs to get back through this area, doesn't it? It needs to go back through that. It doesn't. It rejects that. So what are you going to do? You're going to buy at lower prices still. Why not? Why would you buy at lower prices? No, because the value is ripping higher at this stage, yeah? The value is ripping. Remember I said it's got to be confirmed. It's got to have something confirming it so that it makes sense, right? So this looks more like an accumulation. This looks more like a gameplay setting up for the buyers. So if you were in anything, the question again is, if you were in anything, what would your position be? Your position would be long bonds, wouldn't it? If you're in anything, your position would be long bonds. Now, obviously, when we start looking at these ideas, we start looking at some of these transitions, you'll start to recognize these very, very obvious bigger macro transitions. The big macro buy at the bottom edge, this transition higher, that's now the transition. Remember, that's the transition there. The value bullish. And because you know that transition is a balance area that's sizable, you can start to recognize the actual elements. You can start to recognize the elements for what they are. You've obviously now got a top edge, you've now got a bottom edge. And where does this buy trade take place from? Well, it's the traditional 50 halfback trade. It's almost perfect. So it all does make some kind of sense. And obviously inside of that structure, you're now going to be saying, and obviously the structure got blown out because it's a non-farm payroll report, of course. And then that happens. Boom, you just annihilate the target price and it doesn't even blink, does it? It doesn't even blink at target. So if you were in anything, you'd have been long bonds, long oil. Long bonds, long oil. So pretty good, to be honest, guys. Pretty good if you were in it. If you're not in it, doesn't make any difference. And where's our oil going eventually? Sell side business. We know we're sell side on upticks, guys. Macro wise, sell side and upticks. Damn, it's good. Another little push, and we'll get through the 64s. We'll get into the 63s, and I'll be a happy analyst. I'll be a happy analyst, guys, because that will give us a good tweet from the few days ago when we said it's going to be 63s. I'll be very, very delighted to be able to reprint that one at the weekend for any doubting Thomases. Nasdaq's ripped higher. Fortunately for Max, he was in a buy trade. Max was in a buy trade going into that number. I think we shouted Max for a buy trade earlier, but he did sell it at 39s and then came back in again at 19s, so got lucky. But obviously, again, you would have probably just closed the trade out before the data came out. So that's not going to be put into Max's win record, obviously. So Max is coming up. So let's see if the Max decides to buy on this downtick through the 80s at the moment on the NQs. Bonds still buying, guys. Bonds still buying. If you're still involved in bonds, then you're obviously buying that pullback made a lot of sense. You got a level 2 bottom edge there at 12s. Anybody buy some 11s? Anybody buying some 11s, 10s, 9s? It's actually like a box of chocolates, boys. It's a good trade. It's a good trade. 31 traded. I'm surprised we didn't take out the 190. I was surprised that that never took out. So perhaps they're going to try and run the stops again at the bottom edge, try and get a squeeze on. But I'd like to see them. I'd like to see the price at least making an attempt at 190. Hasn't happened.